Hi, everyone, and welcome into Conversations with Dr. Charles Akle. I'm Pat Bryant, the head of branding here at immy. Have you heard about the ravages of inflammation? Well, today in Conversations with Dr. Charles, we're going to talk about that specifically. So let me introduce Dr. Charles Akle to you. Charles is the Chief Medical Officer here at immy. He's a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons in Britain. He's trained in medicine in Guy's Hospital in London. And Charles, you've worked for many years as a surgeon. You trained many surgeons in the UK and in Europe. And you spent a lot of the last 20 to 25 years in research in immunology. So it's a privilege to be able to spend time with you again. And I'm excited personally about what we're going to chat about today.
Fantastic. Thank you, Pat. Yeah, great pleasure. Um, I mean, to dive in, inflammation
Yeah,
is
talking.
just a fundamental of life, isn't it? It's that response. The definition, I suppose, is the response of your immune system to an external agent, be it a threat or be it something friendly. But it's what really is the final common pathway of your entire immune system. And bear in mind, the immune system is what protects you from
Yeah.
infection. It's what deals with the infection. It can clean and repair, and it rebuilds you afterwards. So, as a surgeon, you know, if we cut somebody open, the incision that we made induces a process of acute inflammation, and it's the immune system that then heals it and repairs it and fixes it.
So that's just an indication that a wound has occurred in that case, right?
Yes, yes, and this is how in primitive life or whatever, if you injured yourself and it was an acute injury, you got a nice healing process, and the blood would clot, and the little macrophages and things would come and build, and repair the scar. The problem is when you get into a situation where chronic inflammation arises. So acute inflammation is actually quite good. It's a process that has a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Right. It starts and it goes away.
Exactly. And it's dealt with, finished, move on to the next one. The problem with chronic inflammation is that it keeps on and on and on and on. So coming back to the wound, if you've got a foreign body, a splinter or something in the wound, it never heals because the process cannot complete, and it keeps resetting. So it's like a computer that keeps going back to the beginning, and you get this disrupted activity, you get inflammation going on, and it has all sorts of ramifications on the rest of the body. Mm-hmm. So we hate that as surgeons. Chronic inflammation in surgery is a real pain because the wound isn't healing, the process that you've been dealing with hasn't been fixed, and this is a real nightmare.
And you've done a lot of transplantation work in your career too. I'm assuming from an immune system, we hear about rejection. Is that the same process? It's like the splinter is a foreign body, so a new organ is obviously a foreign body.
Absolutely, it's very similar process, and because anything that is foreign to to your immune system, each one of us is literally unique. Our immune colors, if you like, the flags we fly are unique to each one of us. And if you put in a piece of material, whether it's another organ, and this was the whole point about transplantation, the only successful transplants that ever took place in the past were twins, identical twins. So if you're an identical twin, you had a virtually identical immune system.
Genetic makeup, yeah.
Yeah, and you could transplant a kidney and that's exactly what was done. The first kidney transplant was done between twins. But if you don't have a twin, then hopefully you find a close match, but you still get the grumble from the immune system. And actually, if you're not careful, you get what's called acute rejection, which is a massive response and can destroy a kidney or a liver. The immune system is so powerful, it can kill a 3-pound, 4-pound liver in 24 hours. Bang. It's explosive. But chronic inflammation then gives rise to chronic rejection, etc. So the problem with chronic inflammation is it leads to all sorts of problems. It leads to that feeling of malaise. People with chronic inflammatory processes, a viral infection, we've talked before about post-viral infections, where the process continues, like with long COVID, it grumbles away. You feel lousy, you don't function properly, you don't eat well, and it's a kind of self-fulfilling cycle which brings you down and down and down and down and can even kill you. And the problem is the long-term effects are bad in terms of things like cancer. We know that malignant change occurs in response to chronic inflammation. We know that mental health issues, be it Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, these are a consequence of chronic inflammatory processes. Arthritis, chronic inflammation, ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, chronic inflammation.
Yeah.
So chronic inflammation is a real nuisance, and anything that we can do to improve that is really important.
So you've talked about a couple of contributing factors. I'm sure there are many. You've talked about diet, the certain types of intake, of foods that are triggering that chronic inflammation. What are some of the contributing factors that you would say contribute most to chronic inflammation in the body?
Oh gosh, I mean, how big is a piece of
Yeah.
string? But what for sure, we know that the modern life and modern living is not proving as brilliant and wonderful as it should be. I mean, we eat well, we put on weight, we're affluent,
The
and yet,
standard American
well,
diet doesn't help.
yeah, and these the problem probably boils down to processed foods. I think if you look now at what's happening out in the world, processed foods are bad news. They are responsible for causing so much hassle. And part of that is because they don't look after the microbiome. That's the bugs that live in, on, and around you. So your gut bacteria, for example, and gut other organisms don't like the junk you're putting down. And so a lot of them die. So instead of having 40, 50,000 different bacteria in your gut, you come down to 4,000 or 5,000, which is not enough to induce a protective effect. So diet is terribly important in terms of maintaining that interaction between the gut and the rest of the body, particularly the brain, which the microbiome does. So chronic inflammation ensues because you're getting all this smoke from the fire. The fire isn't clean. You're getting smoke from the fire, which is not doing us any good at all. And that, if you like, is chronic inflammation.
Now let's branch that over to the immune system, because these conversations really are about gut health, immune health, in particular, autoimmune diseases. You've told me before the manifestation of those diseases is inflammation, where the body's basically attacking itself. How does that work? How does inflammation get involved there?
Oh, inflammation is the weapon that the body uses against itself. I mean, it sounds crazy, but you can destroy your own thyroid, you can destroy your heart, you can destroy your
rheumatoid arthritis,
rheumatoid arthritis, your joints. That's all autoimmune disorders, because the body has a thing and decides that this is, it's seeing something that it should tolerate as something bad. The classic case, easy one to explain, is asthma, where you have pollen, for example, coming in, and peanut allergy was another one that we've discussed in the past. But pollen will do you no harm. Eating a peanut, provided you don't inhale it, won't do any harm. However, for various reasons, the body suddenly decides, hang on a minute, this is a threat. And it fires off it calls out the National Guard and all the rest of it. And you end up attacking yourself. They're shooting blind, and you get damage to the lungs in asthma, you get it to the thyroid in Hashimoto's disease. There are all sorts of conditions where the body attacks itself, and that's often linked to a bad microbiome. Microbiome. The gut is especially linked with all of these things, particularly arthritis. We see that, but also mental health issues are linked, and the development of all sorts of things, including cancer, which is a manifestation of chronic inflammation.
Okay, so let's then branch into immy and Myceliaceae bacteria in particular. How does that interact now with the immune system and result in inflammation regulation? I think is a word that you've used. Help us understand that combination and that effect.
Well, as I said, the problem with modern living is we end up with a very, very limited microbiome, and we've lost that interaction with our natural environment. So the mud in the environment, the forests and the fields, we just don't pick up the exposure to a lot of friendly organisms, of which the mycolocibacteria are terribly important. And the reason they're important is that they don't colonize the gut, unlike a lot of other bugs, be they viruses, yeasts, etc. But
or
they
or
uh,
probiotics and things of that sort. Right.
yes,
Yeah.
it's not a probiotic because it doesn't grow inside. Yeah, but it's what we would call an immunoadjuvant immunoregulator. Because of its nature and structure, for some reason, and we can speculate a lot about that, it acts as a broker, as an adjuvant, as an orchestrator, if you like, for the immune system and its interaction with the microbiome. So you've got this huge orchestra of hundreds and thousands of bugs. Something needs to put them together and talk to the immune system. And one of the things that does that, it's not the only one, of course, is something like immy, the mycolocibacteria, which is very friendly. And it has to keep doing it so that you maintain that regulatory process. So it's immunoadjuvant, it's a broker, and it's an immunoregulator. It directs things in the right way. And it seems to be very effective. It's what we've lost contact with over the time, particularly when we've become urbanized as a society. We don't see green fields, we don't deal in mud, we don't let our kids play in the mud, we clean everything obsessively. So that's an important element of this inflammatory process.
Yes.
Has to be tuned. If it isn't tuned, just like the car doesn't work properly because it's not firing all cylinders in the right way. You've got to tune it, otherwise you don't get any energy.
So you heard it from the good doctor. Go play in the dirt and take immy. Immy is a big help to that with mycolocibacteria, M. aurum algashimo. So if you want to learn more about immy, go to immy.co. That's immy.co, and you'll learn all about some of the things we've been talking about today. And also, if you want to receive notifications of when we've created new versions of Conversations with Dr. Akle, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Charles, thank you so much. Wonderful to spend time with you again.
Always a pleasure, Pat. Great pleasure.